Hello, I'm Brenda Allison, a bookseller at Barnes& Noble, and today I am so excited to be in conversation with Anna Quindlen. Anna is a Pulitzer Prize winner, a New York Times bestseller, and the author of over 24 books, fiction, nonfiction, children's books. We are here today to talk about her latest novel, More Than Enough. More Than Enough is a story of friendship, family, and how our lives are defined both by the things we want and the things we never would have wanted. It's lovely and warm while being funny and real. I'm so looking forward to discussing it today. Anna, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Brenda.
We're going to try and have a spoiler-free conversation today, so let's get underway. More Than Enough grabbed me from the very first page. Can you give us a synopsis of the novel?
Sure. It's a first-person novel told in the voice of Polly Goodman. It's very important for me when I'm writing a first-person novel that I feel a powerful affinity with
Hmm.
the person telling the story, and I sure do with Polly. I think she's great. She's a 41-year-old English teacher at a girls' school in Manhattan. She's married to a guy who is a veterinarian at the Bronx Zoo. I had some fun with that.
Hmm.
And she's part of a book group. You know, I always say, people come up to me all the time and say, no one reads anymore. And my reply is always, then who are all those people in book groups who I
Hmm.
meet when I'm on book tour? Because I
Hmm.
always do. Polly's book group is a little unusual in that they always pick a book and they always buy the book, but they don't read the book. They're not allowed to read the book. That's because one of the members of the book group is Jamie, who is kind of a tetchy character
Uh-huh.
and who early on says to the rest of them, I just want you to know, I'm never reading the book. Now, those of you who are in book groups may know that there are people in your book group who do
Hmm.
read the book. Most of them are not as out there as Jamie. And
Yep.
so Sarah, another one of the members of the book group, decided that what they should all do is select a book and then just be friends. And
Yeah.
that's what they are. They talk about everything and anything. And if they stray too close to the book selection, Jamie says, you read the book, but no one ever does. The members of the book group are Polly's closest friends, especially Sarah.
Hmm.
And for her birthday one year, they give her one of those ancestry kits,
Hmm.
just as a joke,
Yeah.
but she uses it. And what happens after that challenges all her notions about friendship and family and what really matters and who we really are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a lot I want to talk about, especially this idea of a book club that doesn't read the book. But I would love to just start with like, how did this novel reveal itself to you? How did you come up with this idea?
I'm always really interested in female friendship.
Hmm.
And your female friends becoming the family that you have of choice
Hmm.
rather
Yeah.
than the family you were born into. At the same time, this is very much a novel about the family that you were born into.
Yeah.
And those issues are things that I think about all the time. I had been thinking about the ancestry kit aspect of it over the years because I'd read so much about people who were blindsided
Hmm.
by what they discovered. And while I do think that's an important part of the novel, I think how Polly thinks about herself, how it makes her consider how she thinks about herself, and that
Hmm.
friendship that is at the center of this book is much more important than the ancestry aspect per se.
Hmm. Yeah. In fact, the epigraph of the novel is that famous line from Emily Dickinson about like I'm out with lanterns looking for myself. And Polly is looking for herself in many ways, isn't she?
Well, everyone I know is looking for themselves. I mean,
Yeah.
we tend to silo that and think
Hmm.
that that's mainly the preserve of adolescence or younger
Uh,
people, but
yeah.
I'm 73 years old and every day I'm looking for myself. If you stop doing that, you stop being human
Hmm.
because there are constantly things that happen in your life, in your work, that make you have to reassess who you are and what you really care about.
I love that. I've interviewed a couple of authors this past year who wrote kind of midlife novels. And this is a little bit of that. Polly's middle age, she's 40. She's dealing with fertility issues. She's on her second marriage. There's a lot of midlife issues in this novel. But I love this idea that, like, we're always looking for ourselves. Whether you're a teenager, you're in your 20s, you're 40, you're 70, no matter what it is, you're always kind of doing that work of being human.
Well, and one of the things that keeps Polly doing that, I think, is that she spends her working day with adolescent girls. She
Absolutely.
teaches English in the upper school, and so she constantly has these girls bouncing off of her in ways that remind her of how we're not quite sure who we are and what we want to be.
I want to talk about Polly's profession and kind of this idea of, the characters. There's at one point where they talk about how the characters are defined by their professions. Polly's a teacher, her mother is a judge. You talked a little bit earlier about Mark, Polly's husband, and his relationship with animals, Jamie, and she's a therapist. Um, I want to talk about how people and how the characters in this novel are defined by their professions, how that fits in with them.
Well, first of all, teachers. Woo, woo.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
Okay. I mean, really, the most important people in my life, other than my parents, the
Hmm.
most important adults. I am a writer because of teachers, because
Hmm.
over and over again, teachers said to me, "You're good at this."
Hmm.
And really, they're so powerful, they're so influential, and I, I just can't say thank you enough. So making Polly, well, not making Polly a teacher, because the odd thing about what I do is that characters sort of present themselves to. I mean,
Hmm.
from the beginning, I knew Polly was a teacher, and it made me love her even more.
Hmm.
And it gave me the opportunity for her to go deep on certain things, not just through her connection with her students, but her connection with the material that she teaches them.
Yeah.
I mean, I could not have really engaged successfully with someone who was a bio teacher, for example. It's just
Great.
not in my wheelhouse.
Hmm.
But I was an English major in college, and
Same.
English teachers had a huge effect on my life.
Hmm.
And I just admire the way that she brings text to life for her people. But it really is interesting what people do for a living. At one point, Polly suggests that her mother is judgmental,
Yes.
and her husband says she's a judge. And the question, it's kind of a chicken or an egg situation.
Absolutely.
Does Mary Goodman become a judge because she's essentially judgmental, or has she
Hmm.
learned to be essentially judgmental because she's a judge? And I think that's a part of all of our lives, that chicken or
Absolutely.
an egg situation
Hmm.
where certainly our professions shape us, but did we choose it in the first place because of the shape of our own characters?
Absolutely. In a previous life, I was a lawyer, and my husband always like accuses me of being a certain way, and I'll be like, "Well, I don't know if I'm this way because I went to law school and I was trained to think this way, or I was just this way." So it's a great, we encounter that often in life. I want to go back. You were talking about, being an English major, being a reader. Polly is an high school English teacher, and in the novel, Polly uses literature as language and communication, and so do her friends. and her students and her friends, even when they don't read the books of the book club. I want to talk about Jane Austen, of course, The Road Less Traveled, Edna of St. Vincent Millay. How did you choose what to include? And let's talk about literature as language.
Well, for example, I thought that one good way to illuminate some of the issues in this novel was to
Hmm.
use both Jane Eyre and Jean Rhys's novel Wide Sargasso Sea,
Yeah.
which I think is so interesting. First of all, it illuminates the character of Josephine,
Yeah.
is the most drawn character among Polly's students,
Hmm.
in part because she has a personal crisis after she's graduated
Hmm.
from Windsor, the school where Polly teaches. But those two novels so illuminate the fact that um, when you turn the sphere, you see something completely different. Of course,
Hmm.
Jane Eyre has among its plot twists the fact that, and I don't think this is a spoiler for
It's
anyone who's
not.
watching this, that Jane's the man that Jane works for and later marries has another wife,
Hmm.
Mrs. Rochester in the attic, who has become a kind of uh, an avatar for all kinds of hidden truths throughout literature and throughout life.
Hmm.
Wide Sargasso Sea is about her, about
Right.
Mrs. Rochester, a
Right.
different view of who this woman was and what happened to her. And one of the things that I think Polly does so well is to say, on the one hand, on the other hand. We start with that because Josephine says in class that all Jane Austen's novels are basically the same, that
Hmm.
they're all a smart woman who makes a bad choice, and by the end of the novel, realizes she's made a bad choice and makes a good choice.
Hmm.
But when she's pressed on that by a fellow student about whether that means that Jane Austen is not one of the great novelists of all times, Josephine immediately says, "Well, of course she is."
Hmm.
So there's all kinds of ways of looking at the same thing that illuminate. And of course, that's what this novel is about. I mean, Polly is forced to look at her family,
Hmm.
certainly at least one member of her family, in a way she never has before.
Hmm.
And then circle back. I'm going to get the Eliot poem wrong, but the Eliot poem that says essentially we circle around and come back to where we started.
Started.
And there's a lot of that in this book, but the circling is what so much of life is about.
Hmm. Yeah. I want to talk about parents and children. You talk a little, we've kind of touched a little bit on Holly and her relationship with her mother, her relationship with her father is also very important to the book. You've written many other books where like the mother-daughter relationship is key to this. Holly and her mother have a pretty prickly relationship. Can you discuss Polly's relationship with her parents?
Well, this is kind of a first for me because I
Hmm.
tend to write novels in which the mother-daughter relationship is an essentially warm one.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, the mother-daughter relationship in Miller's Valley, for example, has a little bit of an edge to it just because of the kind of woman the mother is, but essentially those two people adore each other.
Hmm.
Not so true here,
Hmm.
um, for a variety of reasons, some of which are Polly's fault,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, it was interesting to me because Polly's mother is a kind of an avatar of a woman of my generation.
Hmm.
She got married, she had children, she looked around, she thought, is that all there is? And her answer to that question was to then, even though she had young children, go to law school, do really well, become a
Hmm.
law firm partner, and be elevated to a judgeship.
Hmm.
And in some inchoate way, Polly doesn't exactly wish she'd had the kind of stay-at-home mother that some of her friends had, but somehow she has this feeling that her mother chose her profession over motherhood.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe that's even true.
Right.
The question is, should she still be carrying this at the
Hmm.
age of 41, particularly when
Right.
she's trying so hard to be a mother herself? It's interesting to me that the men that Polly relies on most now, because her own father is um, in the throes of dementia and
Hmm.
can't speak to her in the way that he did when she was young and felt so beloved by him. The two
Hmm.
men that she relies on the most now are her brother and her husband, both of whom kind of say to her on a regular basis, let it go. You
Move
know,
on. Yeah.
you and your mother are different. That doesn't mean that you have to be in opposition to her.
Hmm.
And I think one of the most important moments for Polly in this novel is right at the very end when she has a conversation with her mother where she suddenly
Hmm.
understands her in a way that she never has before.
Hmm.
She also thinks to herself something that I've thought to myself many times in terms of my friends. Like, is it true that no mother ever really understands her daughter? Is it true that no daughter really understands her mother?
Hmm.
I think there are many answers to that, but certainly it's something that Polly has considered. It was a real leap for me to write
Mm.
about a thornier relationship
Yeah.
between a mother and daughter. You know,
Talk more about that. Did you plan that from the beginning or did it kind of evolve that way or
just the more I got to know Polly, the
uh
more I thought I've known women who had a deep, deep affinity for their mothers
hmm
in ways that shaped them. And
hmm
I've also known women who had a deep, deep affinity for their fathers
hmm
in ways that shaped them differently than that. And pretty early on, I got a sense that Polly was in the second group.
Mm, interesting. Yeah, I want to go back to there's a part kind of near the beginning, maybe Polly is talking to her sister-in-law, Emily, who again, you kind of talked at the beginning about, the family you choose. And her sister-in-law is, not someone she's technically related to, but they're close. They have a good
She's
relationship.
her sister.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't
Yeah.
have a
There's no
sister.
in-law about it.
Right,
It's her
right.
sister.
And Emily says something to Polly because Polly says, like, I wish I felt like being a mother was never enough for my mother. And Emily says, well, what if it wasn't? Is that okay? Like this idea of um, you know, your mother or a woman wanting more than just that. And I think that's hard for Polly too. We haven't talked a ton about it because she's dealing with infertility. She wants a baby. And
Right.
so, like, for her in this stage of her life, she's really struggling with, like, that wouldn't be enough. And even Emily, who loves her children, is annoyed by them, annoyed by her husband, who is a successful businessman but can't, like, pick a baby up. There's a very funny kind of conflict between the two of them that you see snippets of a couple times.
Well, Emily's a great character in that
Yeah.
she loves her kids. She loves being a mother, but she is totally willing to be out there
Yeah.
about something that too often women who have kids aren't willing to be out there about, and that is they are driving me insane. I want to go in the bathroom and lock the door.
Right.
And the two things are not at odds with each other. You can absolutely love your kids. And the other thing that's not at odds is Emily works as a therapist and
Hmm.
she's trying to tell Polly, you can love your job and you can love your kids. And sometimes that balance may not be perfect. Live with it. I mean,
Right.
Emily's kind of the great purveyor of a certain kind of reality. Uh,
Right.
as in opposition to Polly's mother-in-law,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yep.
who is, first of all, she's a kindergarten teacher. So you know something right away about her and about how she is with little kids and about her tolerance for mess
Yep.
and
Shenanigans,
yeah,
being annoyed, being touched.
exactly.
Great.
And she's just in many ways just a wonderful person.
Oh, she's like a
Um,
dream. Yes.
and she's willing to cop to a little bit of annoyance with her four sons, but
Hmm.
but not a whole lot. So there's all these different iterations of motherhood
Yeah.
in this novel. I mean, it still lives inside me so powerfully. My elder son studied with the writer Amy Bloom when he was in
Mm-hmm.
college. And we were looking at an interview Amy, who is one of my favorite novelists, had done. And she said, every writer has one subject, and mine
Mm.
is love, is what Amy said in this interview. And Quinn turned to me and said, wow, it's been years since this moment, and I still seize up whenever I say it. Quinn said, well, Mom, if every writer has one subject, yours is motherhood.
Mm.
And just the fact that he got that and that he owned that in that way, it was really powerful to me. And he was right. He was
Mm.
right. I mean, it's one of the things that I've written about over and over and over again.
Hmm. That's really great. And I love that, like, earlier you were talking about like how well can we be known by our children, or how well do we know our parents? And that must have really felt like you were really seen by your child. And I love that. It's so
Well, yeah,
lovely.
except my
But it's more
work,
complicated than
my
that, of
work was
course.
really seen by
Yeah.
my child. So, especially if you're a writer, there's this very complicated nexus of what you put out into the world and who you are at home and how your
Mm.
children know you as mom.
Hmm.
And then how your children know you through your work. I mean, I've always said, after I die, if my children are looking for me, there's an entire shelf of books that they can
Right.
go to. But that's not exactly accurate because while they are such powerful reflections of who I am and what I care about, who I have been and who I am as their mother is somehow a different iteration of
Oh,
that.
of course. Yeah. Which is also a theme in the book, which is this idea of like who we think people are versus like who people really are inside. And this real like both and dichotomy of humans. Here most of the characters that we see that about are women. But like Jamie is prickly and loving. Sarah is private and public. But this idea of like who people appear to be, or how we know them versus like who they are inside, that balance, that yin yang, if you will, both of those things are always true, right?
Right. And also who we are in different settings.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, Polly in the classroom is very sure of herself.
Hmm.
Not so much, in her daily life, in her interactions with people in her daily life. And I think that's true of so much of us,
Hmm.
that what we bring to the table professionally sometimes is at odds with who we are personally. I mean, uh, all three of the other women in the book group are intrigued by the fact that, in fact, Jamie is a couples counselor, a couples therapist, and all she ever does is like poke at them, and they're
Hmm.
thinking, "Gee, how does she do this?" And the answer is that we are often quite different
Hmm.
in our professional lives. I mean, certainly, um, I have a sure-handedness now as a writer, one hopes, after all these years, that I often don't necessarily have in my daily life, or or as my kids would say, hey,
Oh, sure.
don't
Kids will
you
keep you
have it
honest that way.
together?
Yep.
So much.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I think, the first line of the book is I think Polly says, I said I'd tell them everything. And she is talking about the DNA test and her book club, but this idea of telling people things about ourselves and our lives kind of weaves itself throughout the novel, both who we tell and what we tell, and sometimes even what we don't tell, even to those closest to us. There's a part later in the book, Sarah, Polly's best friend, and Lou, her mother-in-law, spend time together. And Lou, it's really touching and lovely. Lou learns things about Sarah that Polly never knew. So can you kind of discuss this idea about like revelation and how we tell and who we tell about ourselves?
well, first of all, that's the nexus of a novel, isn't it? Every
Yeah.
page. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that.
Hmm.
But I also think there are people who make safe spaces for you,
Mm.
um, both because they're open to you and because you're open to them. I mean, one of the reasons Sarah is able to tell Lou certain things is not because she hasn't been open in her friendship with Polly, but because she protects Polly from some things.
She does.
And I think we all have friends like that who get
Mhm.
ready to text something, who get ready to email something, who get ready to say something and think that won't work for her. That will be
Mhm.
hard for her. That will be upsetting for her. So, particularly if you're a good person, and Sarah is probably in many ways, now, Sarah and Lou are the good people in this
Mhm.
book. You're always calibrating that empathy factor, which I
Mm.
think is so important and so powerful. And and looking beyond. I mean, one of the interesting things in the novel for me is that Polly feels like she looks beyond with her students.
She does.
And then
Yeah.
in two cases, she realizes that she hasn't looked hard or far enough.
She made
One,
assumptions.
one with a student she does not like, who
Hmm.
challenges her, and another with a student who she absolutely adores and thinks is just an exceptional intellect,
Hmm.
who is struggling, continues to struggle, and all Polly has seen is kind of the outer shell, the veneer. Um,
Hmm.
and and I think that both Sarah and Lou are people who are constantly looking beyond the veneer, constantly. And Polly is learning to do that,
Yeah.
but it's harder for her.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about, some of the family relationships, and we've touched a little bit on the friendships, but I want to talk about, and you kind of talked about it earlier, about like kind of one of the central core themes of this novel, which is this idea of friends as chosen family. I want to talk about the book club. I want to talk about, I thought about this Esther Perel quote that I think about a lot that is like the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of our relationships. And I want to talk about those adult friendships. The book club's been together for 12 years. They've seen each other through marriage, divorce, children, infertility, loss. I want to talk about those relationships and how they happen and how they change over time.
Well, I think if you ask most women at every stage in their life, but certainly at the stage of their lives that that I am now,
Hmm.
they would tell you that their female friendships are how they get over.
Amen.
You
Yep.
know, many of them are married to
Hmm.
men that they have a very powerful love for, but there's something about those women in your life.
Hmm.
And actually, as the mother of two sons as well as a daughter, I mourn a bit the fact that in general, men don't seem to me to have those same friendships at that same level.
Hmm.
Um, and they sort of feel outside that magic circle a little bit. I
Hmm.
mean, you can see that with Polly's husband, Mark, who is
Yeah.
fantastic.
He's like a dreamboat.
He's just great, right?
Yeah.
He's great. But he sort of feels like he's outside the magic circle of the book club where people
Yeah.
say things that they wouldn't otherwise say and offer support that maybe their male counterparts don't offer one another. And I hear that over and over again from women. I
Yeah.
couldn't get by without my girlfriends. And that's certainly true of Polly and the people in the book club, particularly Sarah, who is the only one in the book club who doesn't have children of her own, although she has stepsons.
Hmm.
And so, to some extent, has turned the members of the book club really into her family.
Hmm.
She's a widow. She
She's
doesn't.
a little bit older than the other women too, I
No,
think.
she and Helen are,
Helen are the same
and
age.
then Jamie and Polly are. But it's not that big an age difference. It's more difference in circumstances.
Sure.
And she's really turned them into her family, and she's really turned Polly into her sister in the best possible way. And so much of what she does for Polly later on, and so much of her keeping Polly at arm's length when she is
Mm.
struggling is because she sees her as her little sister. And
Mm.
there's a kind of a warmth between them. But it's so interesting to me because I think as Polly says in the book, when you're in that kind of geometry of friendship, where
Hmm.
there's four or five or six of you, you're not really supposed to have a favorite, right?
Yep.
Everybody's supposed to be created equal, except that Polly and Sarah have a relationship that is that transcends the relationship they have with the other two. And I think that Polly fools herself into thinking that that's not apparent.
Yeah.
At the end of the book, we know that Jamie and Helen understand that, in fact, it's the case.
Right. She's like, I didn't want them to know that we go on these walks or whatever. And, again, like when you're in a group of female friends, which is all I can speak of, um, sometimes there are relationships that are closer than the other relationships, and that is very normal. But you also like kind of feel bad and you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So it was funny to see it
Exactly.
kind of play out in those dynamics, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to talk about women and their bodies is also like a theme that comes up in this book. Near the beginning of the book, you have Polly kind of observes like all the women I know are used to hating their bodies. She even talks about like a girl in college who was obsessed by how ugly her feet were, which is like it's such a great like specific detail, and we all like knew that girl, and you'd be like, I've never even looked at your feet, girl. Okay. But it doesn't like really matter how beautiful or successful you are. Like every woman does this. And now Polly's facing infertility. Sarah has had cancer, and now they're hating like the inside of their bodies. There's public talk about menopause in the zeitgeist now, and it's so great we're all talking about it. But just how does this culture of body hating affect women and their relationship with themselves and others?
Well, I think at the moment that Polly and Sarah are in now, what they've understood is that obsessing about your nose or your breasts or your
Yep.
feet is really foolish given the fact that things can go on inside your body that
Mhm.
can turn it against you. I mean, Polly is constantly aware of what's going on inside her body because she is struggling, trying to
Mhm.
have a baby. And once a month, she is reminded that, as she says, she has utterly failed.
Yep.
And that's so that's heartbreaking for
Mhm.
me, that
Yeah.
idea that that would happen. And of course, she's taken it one step further. She's undergoing fertility treatments, and again, is told by doctors, or learns while she's having tests that her body has failed her.
Yeah.
And so the idea of going from feeling some hostility with your body because of societal standards of attractiveness, thinness,
Mhm.
beauty, whatever, all those horrible things,
Yeah.
to feeling like the real test is not what's on the outside, but what's on the inside, and whether you can manage that or not. I mean, it's so funny. I'm someone who has really been lucky enough to have good health virtually her entire life.
Mhm.
And recently I discovered, um, not by very important symptoms, that I was deeply, deeply anemic.
Oh.
And I have to go to this infusion center
Oh, sure.
where almost everyone else is having chemo
Mm,
and have an iron infusion. And I was furious at my body.
mm.
I thought, you've turned on me. As I said to the doctor, I cannot eat any more kale and spinach than I do right now, right?
Right. Right.
And
I'm
it
really working on this iron, guys.
it made me think about Polly and think about
Mm,
how um, we tootle along thinking our heart will beat, our
mhm.
lungs will inflate, our gut will take in food. And then there are times when you discover that sometimes your own body is uncooperative. And unlike me, who went to the anger place and then thought, okay, you're just making a fool out of yourself. This is
Mm.
ridiculous. Polly has gone from the anger place to the deep, deep grief
Yeah.
place. Um, and I went there with her,
Mm.
as a writer. And people, a lot of people, well, readers always assume that there's a lot of you in your protagonist.
Sure.
When I wrote Black and Blue, there were people who assumed that I had experience of domestic violence.
Hmm.
When I wrote Still Life with Breadcrumbs, people thought I'd grown up in a town that had been turned into a reservoir.
Hmm.
Neither of those things were true. And with this, there have been a number of early readers who have assumed that I have experience with infertility. Um, I am, I was lucky enough to be able to say, no, that was not my own experience. But I think any of us have had experience with grief, with
Hmm.
loss, with a sense that there was something we very much wanted that felt as though it was out of our reach, forever. And so I was able really to inhabit that with Polly, even though it hadn't been my own experience.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, you did an excellent job of like that empathy of what that experience is like. I dealt with infertility myself for 2 years before I had kids, and like that feeling of like every month, like I have failed, or even like, when you were a teenager or in your 20s and you're like, oh God, I better not get pregnant. And you're like,
Yeah.
as it turns out, I didn't need to worry about that. Like there were so many great like little details that really rang true for me and my experience. And this is that idea, it's grief. And it's also like this idea of what you thought your life would be versus what has turned out to be. And that kind of you see that from many of the different characters and how they wrestle with that idea of like, this is what I thought my life would be, and here's what it is.
Well, first of all, thanks so much, Brenda, for ratifying that I
Yeah.
got it right. You do always feel as a novelist as though uh, you're taking this leap of faith, and maybe you're leaping farther than you're entitled to.
Mm.
And so to hear that you stuck the landing,
Oh yeah.
um, is really a terrific feeling. But I do think that all of us live with the disconnect between what we thought was going to happen and
Mhm.
what did happen. And the thing that I think sometimes we lose sight of is at the moments when our life seems less than what we had come to expect,
Mhm.
there's always a possibility that in a year or 10 years or 20 years, it will turn out to be much more.
Mhm.
The progression sometimes feels like it's a downward slope. And the truth is that, you know, there's so many possibilities of going up again or up a different slope,
Right.
then I mean, despite the fact that Polly so resents it, um, her mother looked at what her life was and thought, this is not what I had in mind.
Mhm.
And she changed it. And she
Right.
changed it in ways that worked for her. They're not ways that necessarily worked for her young daughter.
Mhm.
She made that calculus.
Right. And you see that theme with Josephine as well. You talked about her earlier. She's one of Polly's students. And, she kind of has this realization that I think we all have at some point in life, which is like, oh, I did these, I worked hard, so I got this, and then I got this, and this is it. This is not what I thought it would be. Also, with Polly's mother of like, oh, I had children, I got married. This is not like that idea of like, this is not what I thought it would be, but what can I choose? What control do I have? And I think, again, this idea too runs through the novel. Like, what do we have control over and what do we not?
Well, and I think Josephine is incredibly brave
Same. I
because
loved her.
she's on a treadmill.
Hmm.
And we all know what the treadmill is for the brilliant
Hmm.
young woman. And it is you go to a certain kind of school and you pick a certain kind of job and you push and you push and you push. And Josephine has been wise and brave enough to say, this all feels empty to me. And she
Hmm.
says to Polly, joy, that's my
Yeah.
game plan. And that's what I think we lose sight of and we sometimes have enormous regrets about. Did you have joy?
Hmm.
Did you wake up in the morning and think the sun came up today? And I I think for a variety of reasons, I've tried to push toward that during the course of my life, and it's made all the difference. And somehow at the same time, it's allowed me to do the work um, that has really satisfied me, not only as a writer, but as a mother.
I love that. I found a commencement speech you gave at Wash U in St. Louis back in 2017, and you talked about embracing a life that feels like it belongs to you. That idea comes back here too. Like you've got Josephine who's like, this life doesn't feel like me. And even Polly, in some ways, is making choices. She makes a choice before the action of the book to get a divorce, to be a high school teacher rather than a college professor, which some people think was a step down. But that idea of choosing your life rather than having it foisted behind onto you or choosing or doing something because that's what's expected of
Well,
you.
you mentioned before the way the world sees body image for women,
Yeah.
you know, and the voices of the world are extremely loud. This is what you should wear. This is what you should look like. This is what you should do. And the problem with those voices is they're all external. And
Mhm.
there is that moment where you have to say to yourself, yes, I know everybody says, whoever everybody
Everybody.
is, everybody says this is the way I should go. Why am I not happy? Why am I not fulfilled? And as I said about Josephine, we live in a culture that bombards us with so many messages, always has, but now with social media,
It's
really,
never ending. It's in my
really
house. It's
does it.
right.
That it takes an incredible amount of bravery to say, nope, not doing that. don't like it, don't get any satisfaction from it, am going another way. And I think we underestimate the bravery, the courage that we expect of people when they do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A little bit of a change of topic here, but we
Uh,
haven't really talked about there's a little bit of a mystery at the center of More Than Enough. The book club gives Polly this DNA kit, and she finds out she has a second level relative that has also taken the test. And this person wants to meet with her. It's the character of Talia, and she tries to figure out the whole book. She's trying to figure out, like, how are we related to one another? Can you talk about, like, how you wove that into the book and how that really affects the action of the novel?
well, because eventually it's going to mean that Polly will understand her family and where she
Mhm.
comes from in a way that she hasn't understood them before. And I do think that that's what happens to some people
Mhm.
with these ancestry kits. And not for the better.
Sure.
You read over and over again about people who discovered that their father had an entire second family,
Right.
or that their parents, when they were teenagers, had a baby and gave the baby up for adoption. Things
Mhm.
that not only make you reconsider your family, but make you feel as though part of your background was essentially a lie.
What do I even know? Like, what is exist?
Exactly.
Like, what's the truth? It like kind of messes
Exactly.
with your concept of reality, right?
But I think what you see with Polly is that ultimately her bond with her parents and her brother
Hmm.
is so powerful that she's able to transcend this change of circumstance to, as we were saying earlier, come back to where she began. And that's
Mm,
the last line of the novel
yeah,
is her coming back to where she began. And it also raises the whole question of parenthood. You know, Lou is Polly's mother-in-law, but in some powerful way, isn't she kind of a mother to her?
absolutely.
Emily is her sister-in-law, but really they're sisters. Sarah isn't even related to her, and yet
She's
Sarah
like a
is as
sister
much
too.
family as any family that she's ever had. So I think we try to ensilo people in our
Hmm.
lives. And certainly that's what has caused the bad feeling between Polly and her mother, that her mother didn't stay in the
Didn't.
silo that Polly had dreamed up. When in fact, human connections are broader than that and more powerful than that. We should open ourselves up to the idea. I mean, my best friend always says, "You're my sister from another mister." And you know,
Right,
I
right.
think there's something to that.
Yeah, my sister-in-law will tell people, she's like, my sister, she's married to my brother, but like,
Yeah, yeah.
right, it's more complicated. And I think this idea of family, both chosen and the one we are born into, there's a scene kind of early, Emily is a therapist like Jamie, and she says, like, one of those common problems is she sees this like illusion of what people, again, like, what should it be? What does everyone say? Like, I picture family looking like a Hallmark movie or something that isn't real. And like when you can separate those like expectation versus the reality of what we have, like that theme kind of appears again and again in the novel, right?
Well, are blood and heart the same thing?
Mm,
Are they sometimes separate? Are there times when they're always separate? I mean, those are some of the things that we have to think about when we think about who we love, who we care for, who has shaped us. And I don't think there are any set to music answers anymore.
sure.
They used to be very simple 100 years ago. Blood was everything.
Hmm.
Blood was everything. And I think that one of the great elements of progress in modern life is that we've come to understand that heart is as important as blood, and that sometimes more important.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Um, we're getting close to wrapping it up. I want to ask about the title, More Than Enough. I think we've kind of already talked about some of these ideas. What is enough? What is contentment? Is it even possible to find it?
Well, titles are so difficult for not only in my own work, but in other people's work. People will say to
Yeah.
me, "What are you reading?" And I say, "Oh, I'm reading the new Denise Mina." They
Uh-huh.
say, "What's it called?" And I say, somehow, somehow the author gets under my skin in a way
Yep.
not necessarily a title does. But there's a moment in the book where Polly says to her brother Garrison, who we haven't talked about very much, but who
No,
is
he's
like
a real character.
realist character.
Yeah.
Um, she to tell him what he means to her, she says, "Oh, Gar, you're so much more than enough."
Mhm.
And there was something about that that sort of went to the heart of things.
Mhm.
It seemed to me that enough is fine, but more than enough, above and beyond. I mean, Sarah is more than enough, as she proves eventually to
Yeah.
Polly in a profound way. Um, Lou is more than enough. I think that those people that really that are really the bedrock of our lives tend overwhelmingly not to be enough, not to say, well, she was a good enough mother or he was a good enough
Mm,
father, but they're more than enough. And that's how I came around to the title on this.
I love that. Are there any other influences on the book, the characters, anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I think that one of the things that Polly's profession shows is that other people's work has been a profound influence on me. I mean, the way to become a writer is to read.
Yes, to read.
There's no question about it. And actually, you kind of learn almost as much from not so good stuff
Oh,
as from good stuff, because what makes things not so good is often clearer
uh-huh.
than the nuance and subtlety of what makes things great. I mean, reading is my favorite pastime, except for hanging out with my kids and talking about what we're all reading.
I love it. Well, that is a perfect segue into the last question I always ask on the podcast. We're a bookstore. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you what you're currently reading and loving.
Um, well, it's hard for me to answer that question in a public setting because usually I'm reading galleys.
Oh, same.
Means
Yes,
I'm telling
yep.
someone to read something that they won't be able to
For
read
6 months.
for
Yep.
6 months.
Yep.
But the book I just finished is a memoir called Strangers by Belle.
Oh, wasn't it
Um,
great?
it's wonderful, and it just debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. So I am not alone in my admiration.
Yeah, I zipped through, like I read it, I like inhaled it in like a day, and I thought it's a divorce memoir. And I've read a number of those, and it's like really beautifully written. I just thought it was really beautifully written. I really
And
liked
it's
that one
and
as
it's
well.
bigger than that because
It is.
there's so much about her family of origin and also about what women do.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the ways in which Belle wound up in the position she wound up with in when her marriage ended is because women do certain things because they're trusting, because they're loving, because they want the men in their lives to feel good about themselves. That when everything goes kerflooey, were not wise things to do.
Hmm. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Well, Anna, thank you so much for this time today. I really enjoyed it. More Than Enough is in bookstores now.
Thanks, Brenda. And booksellers, yay!
Yay!
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.